Welcome to Self-Direction. This is the first in a series of webinars that will help to guide you through the process of self-directed services. The first session will introduce you to the basics of what self-direction and self-directed services are about. Future sessions will talk about how and why self-directed services came about, how you can get started on a self-directed path, the people you will work with, how to make a self-directed plan, and trends in where the systems of supports and services are heading and how they will be provided in the future. You will hear other terms that are used when talking about self-direction. These include self-advocacy and self-determination. Self-determination is a deeply rooted philosophy in American life. We want to be our own masters. We want to be able to determine the course of our own life, decide where we live and work and how we spend our time, and exercise our civil rights, for example, how we choose our elected officials. Self-advocacy is a skill that we all need to develop in order to be part of society. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities in particular need self-advocacy skills to make their needs known, to speak up for themselves individually and alongside other people with similar goals and interests. Check out the websites on the slide. They are useful resources for people seeking to learn more about self-advocacy in New York and the role of self-determination. Most of the services for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities are provided through the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, known to everyone as OPWDD. It isn't the only source of services, but it is the most important one, and OPWDD is the source for self-directed services in New York State. OPWDD is headquartered in Albany, but has regional offices known as Developmental Disability Regional Offices, or DDROs, and satellite offices around the state. The OPWDD website provides a great deal of information, including how you can get in touch with your closest office. OPWDD funds services in two different ways. In what we will call traditional services, OPWDD pays an agency to provide the services. The bulk of the funding comes from Medicaid, a program that is funded half by the federal government and half by New York State. The agencies are non-profit corporations, sometimes known also as voluntary agencies or as provider agencies. We will call them provider agencies. The OPWDD regional office can provide you with information about the provider agencies in your area. There is a wide variety of agencies. Some are small and local, and others have affiliates throughout the state. Choosing an agency to work with is very important, and you need to spend the time to see which agency will best fit your needs and which shares your values. Agencies create programs to serve people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and are reimbursed by the state. The employees of the provider agencies who perform the day-to-day work of providing support to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are called direct support professionals, or, because we love to use acronyms, DSPs. Traditional services will include activities such as day habilitation, where people with intellectual and developmental disabilities work under the supervision of a direct support professional in a small group in the community. They perform volunteered tasks and develop their skills. Community habilitation direct support professionals provide training and support for independence in activities of daily living, either one-on-one or in a small group. With agency-controlled housing, a traditional group home where people with intellectual and developmental disabilities live together with direct support professionals' help that may be 24/7 or may be less frequent depending on the level of need. Service systems are evolving. A long history of research advocacy, policy, legislation, and regulation has shown that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities should live and work in the community as much as possible. It is now more than 40 years since the law required that everyone receive a free and appropriate education. Young adults leaving high school now have received more education, their personal goals are more ambitious, and they are far more integrated into society. They do not want to live a segregated or marginalized life. We all want to be part of the workforce. Sure, the paycheck matters, and having money lets us make choices. But we also want to feel part of something worthwhile and to be part of the community. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities are no different. Society's attitudes are changing. We are less concerned these days about why someone has a disability, and more about what we can do to help them to achieve their full potential. We are beginning to give people more control over their budgets and more responsibility. And the population of people who need support is growing. People are living longer, and more people are recognized as having needs arising from developmental disabilities. And lastly, there is a staff shortage. This is demanding work. It isn't well paid, and until recently there were only limited training and career prospects. That part of the picture is improving, but there is a growing demand for direct support professionals as the general population ages. With self-direction, you get to create a wider choice of services. Within your budget, you have the option to mix some familiar services like supported employment or day rehabilitation with new community-based services. Instead of the funding going to a provider agency which then delivers the service, the funds are directed by you through a fiscal intermediary. Why does this matter? If you know your budget, you can choose between services and use your funds on the activities that matter most to you and find the most cost-effective way of obtaining those services. You can choose from a menu of traditional services, but you can also choose to add services from different agencies or from typical community businesses, such as a health club. You can mix support for employment with a day rehabilitation program and with recreation programs. The key is flexibility within budget and plan parameters. The picture will help to explain the difference between traditional services and self-directed services. On the left is the traditional model. The state pays provider agencies to create programs designed to help a wide range of people. The person chooses which of the programs is most appropriate for them, but they only have a limited say in how the program will address their specific needs. The menu of programs is fixed. In the self-directed model, the funding is paid through an intermediary directly to the person. The person may choose to continue with some traditional services, but they have much more flexibility in how those services are created and delivered. When money follows the person, known as MFP, everything in the system changes. So what does this mean to me? This is a lot of information to absorb in a short time, and it isn't always easy to understand. Don't worry, it gets easier. This session is only an overview. In the remaining sessions of the series, we will look into other aspects of how a person can use self-direction in more detail and steer you to locate people who can help. This is difficult stuff. There is a lot to learn. It takes time, but that time is well rewarded. On the page is a link to OPWDD's webpage. It's a very useful site, and you can use it to locate your nearest regional office. WIHD provides support for self-direction in Westchester County, and our contact information is also shown. The next session will discuss how and why self-direction came about.